This is starting to become like a journal, a really good journaling format for me. So, I've been a reoccurring theme in my life, recently has been some, there's suddenly a bit of a shift that's taken place in terms of, a lot of the stress that was involved in my daily activities and the responsibilities that needed to be taken care of. Like that has fallen away, and now I'm like in this stretch where I'm not, it's like I have more leisure time, but suddenly, it's not like my other sort of traumas from my life just kind of like went away, but now they're a little bit more poignant. And, like in the absence of, other things that needed to be done, there was a certain, even though it's stressful, that gave me a routine to focus on things that, felt like I was doing something meaningful. And now, there's this lull in time, which, it's like, on the face of it, it's nice to sort of relax. But, I think sometimes when we come out of a decompression, come from like a high pressure zone to a low pressure zone, like, when we come back home from the battlefield, so to speak, we're just kind of left with like all the shit that we saw out there, and a lot of the snap judgments and decisions that we made, and our life, we're just sort of like, we land on this planet and we just like hit the ground running, and sometimes we just never stop, and we receive injuries and we don't really have time to heal from them until we receive the next one. And so it's, even though there's been a lot of time and space in my life to think about things, there's also just always been sort of a constant stress, different, sort of dramas going on in my life that made it harder for me to really just like focus on me and what I wanted. Sort of had to, always plan around other people, and often sort of felt at the whim of those around me. And, like, as much as I, may have thought my input was underutilized, I could have, it didn't really matter at the end of the day. You kind of like, you can't really convince people who are like going, have all the momentum going in one direction, that suddenly, that they need to listen to you. And, if you're, a young man dealing with older people, older men, often, it's like they're not gonna take you serious because, they have, their objectives long precede your existence in their life. And so, any objections that you have, you kind of, have to humble yourself to the fact that even if you know better, it doesn't mean that the circumstance will change, because people have their commitments, even if those commitments end up costing them very dearly. So, yeah, like that has been a stress in my life, sort of feeling like I'm going along with things that often I felt, were contra to what I felt like was the right thing to do. But, ultimately it felt like, had to pick the least worst option. As I think, I'm trying to remember who said that about like democracy or something. Like, democracy sucks, but it's better than everything else. So that's sort of what I'm talking about in life. It's like sometimes we have to make decisions that we know aren't going to be the best, but we still have to go along with things even when they suck, and that they're not going to like lead to necessarily a great place. Anyhow, so now I'm starting to head, I'm a little bit older. I'm starting to head in a direction in my life where I'm starting to like feel a little bit more optimistic about the future. I'm still not completely out of the woods, with what I'm trying to achieve, but I'm getting closer. And, last couple of weeks, I've had more time to kind of like, decompress, like I said, and that's brought up, some, difficulties, old feelings from, my adolescence, some, particularly painful, lessons. I don't know, you can call them lessons or traumas. Traumas are kind of like lessons in disguise. A trauma is only a trauma until you've unpacked it, looked at it, figured out what is it, that you can do to take your strength back, take your confidence back, and find out how to move forward and how to use what you learned, not as a detriment to your self-esteem, but as a notch or a feather in your cap, as something to once you fully understand it, you don't have to be so afraid of it. You have to, you kind of just understand this is a reality. This is part of life. This might have been an ugly face when I first saw it. This might have been a difficult situation. And, the lesson may have been that, there was nothing that I could do. But just because there's nothing that we can do, that doesn't mean that we have to make some decision about ourselves that it was us that was fucked up, Yeah, the situation was fucked up, and perhaps we that imprinted on us in some way that makes us have like a physical response in our body to when we are exposed to similar situations. But then the trick is to remember, okay, this situation is similar, but it's not the same. And there might be choices that I have here that I'm overlooking because I'm having this traumatic response. And so sometimes when we have that traumatic response that just keeps turning inside of us, for me last night, had just uncomfortable feelings in my body, sort of a despondent feeling in my head of just kind of darkness and feeling like I'm falling deeper into the abyss. But then I kind of just let go of that. I let go of the narrative, and I sort of listened to my own advice, that I often talk about, paying attention to the actual sensation in my body. And, sometimes that is nothing apparent changes. Sometimes our mind really has a strong fucking grip on our nervous system, and we just cannot disengage. But the intention is what matters. And last night, and it's like when the claws are ready to loosen their grip, they sort of sometimes they do it, and it's surprising how we suddenly we're an energy shift takes place, and we find ourselves in a much more calm and relaxed place, where before we saw only darkness, despair, and, horror. So that was a little bit of last night. I finally was able to unclench those jaws, unclench that, jaw. I said claws, but now I'm saying jaws. Either way, the metaphor works. And I was able to go into my body without allowing my mind to continuously tell me, that I'm fucked up in some way, that this is something about me, that there is nothing I can do, that I'm kind of fucked going forward. And I was able to go to the feeling, and in the feeling, it became clear it's not just about me and my pain. This is something that has preceded me. This pain has been caused by something that precedes me. This injury that I'm suffering is something that is sort of has been in the development of humanity for a long time. And it seems very personal to me, and it seems very the details of my life seem like it's all about me, but in going to the feeling and letting go of the thoughts, I can see how much the thoughts are a disguise for the reality, that this is something that I'm processing that has been in the human nervous system, not just my nervous system, but in the human nervous system, for a long time. And I just happen to be infected with this information, this challenging information about what it means to be human, and figuring out how to heal that wound inside myself so that I don't continue to re-injure myself over and over again, and continue to send out that same frequency that the world kind of sends out, and that I resonate with. And in that, I really felt strongly, I felt somehow connected to my body in a way, that I hadn't for some time. And I felt the pain inside of me, and it was, it was feeling like I was doing God's work, essentially. I mean, I don't want to try to I don't, on the one hand, I don't want to apologize for sounding, grandiose, or trying to paint myself as some hero or something. I'm not. I'm just expressing it how it felt, essentially. I'm doing something internally that is very important. It's work that needs to be done. It's work that a lot of people haven't done. And to really be able to face these, scary thoughts, step away from them, and go back into the present long enough to really be here and now and in the body, and remember that, life is life, and death is it's kind of an illusion, because, what is alive is alive. What is dead is in the imagination. What we think about something as dead is not, that is a story too. Death is a story. That's a myth. It's a myth that we believe because we don't know, we don't believe in, necessarily because we believe, it's because if we don't believe in an afterlife, we believe in death, but death is only an idea, and life is what we know when we're alive. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it made sense to me. It reminded me how I am life. I am not, the body. I am in this body and I'm experiencing, and this body is like a philosopher's stone that is transmuting energies in the world, a lot of challenging energies, but I am life. I am the current of life. And, my body is a reflection of that current. It's not who I am, It's kind of like one of my favorite two of my favorite words, lucid, and my other favorite word is pareidolia. Pareidolia is when we see things, where there are, like if I saw like some clouds and I saw a face in the clouds, or I look at the moon and I see like a face on the moon, or I look at like some dirt on the ground and I see a dog or something. That's what pareidolia is. And it's kind of like what we do when we look at other people. We see a face because it looks like a face, but what is it really? It's like a bunch of cells, that happen to resemble something that we recognize. But in essence, it's the same as seeing an image on the ground that happens to look like a face. And the faces that we see on other people, they're like paintings, It's like, God has painted these faces, but what I'm trying to say is the reality of who they are is not, their face and what looks like a face. It is the spirit that lives inside of them, and that is, where the real being is. It's like that current that flows through them. And in that current, last night I felt like I was like an organ processing for God, like I was like some kind of organ finding its way through the twists and turns of this body, like the energy was like finding its way through the maze of this body, the maze that's, the different pieces of information that have made, sort of blocked the current from flowing directly from, the bottom to the top, sort of finding their way, winding their way through my body. And somehow I've, knew, in that piece, in paying attention to that, and to paying attention to what the sensation was, and the pain of it, the intensity of it, I found, the peace of being able to be with it, being able to be with it because it needed my attention. And the best thing that I could do here on earth was to be with where my attention is required to be the most. And my body was like, where it needed to be. So, anyhow, I like sort of like journaling these experiences, trying to do my best to put them into words. Anyway, have a good one.